Hi, welcome to Microsoft Build 2022. This is a Ask the Expert session, and we are going to be talking about delivering the value with apps that plug into the Microsoft Teams platform. Today, we have an awesome panel, and I'll hand it over to them to introduce themselves.
Excellent. Well, I'll go first. My name is Corey Sanders. I'm the Corporate Vice President of Microsoft Solutions. So I am responsible for helping customers use our products, deploy solutions, and enable and bring value to their end customers. And so really excited to be here. I actually have been at Microsoft for 17 years. Spent about 10 years in the Azure team as well, working on Azure products and solutions, and now help enable customers. And really honored to be a part of the panel, and hopefully can add some value in sort of explaining how some other customers are doing things or how they're using these capabilities, and enabling such great collaborative applications in their team's experience. So thank you. Erin, over to you.
Hi folks, I'm Erin Bailey. I'm a program manager on the Microsoft Teams team, where I support strategic partners who are developing apps for Teams. So a lot of the apps that Trent and I were talking about in the session that you saw earlier during Build, those are partners that I work with and collaborate with on a day-to-day basis to help them have successful apps in Teams. So I've helped lots of partners, especially in the DevOps and customer support space, develop apps and launch them for customers. So really excited to bring some of the knowledge from those experiences to help you while you're developing your apps as well.
Awesome, great to have you guys here. So this is our Microsoft, this is a live digital event, and this is the Microsoft Digital Event Code of Conduct. And we want to ensure our event is safe and welcoming environment for all. So there's few ways you can engage in this live event. You can use chat box to ask questions, post anonymously, or use your name. Questions will appear to all once approved. You can also upvote these by clicking on the thumbs, and experts will ask these questions verbally. We'll do our best to answer all the questions, and we'll tackle the popular ones first. Here's some etiquettes for the session. This session is recorded, and please don't record session on your own, and help our moderators and do not spam the chat. Let's get into the Q&A. All right, so now you should be able to pose questions in the chat window, and our experts will answer these questions.
Maybe while folks are warming up, do we want to do just a little bit of discussion on some of the work that Erin and I have done, and maybe we'll give people some ideas on questions to ask?
Yep, definitely. Perfect. So why don't you take a stab at that, Corey, then?
You bet. So look, I think, the thing I wanted to start off with was just the changes that at least I'm seeing with the customers I'm working with, both big and large enterprise and startups, on sort of how they're engaging their sort of workforce in a new way. And obviously the pandemic has been horrific and terrible, but it's required some of these changes. But one of the benefits that we're really seeing with the sort of usage and expansion of Teams as sort of an application platform and collaborative sort of experience is twofold. There's probably many, but two that at least jump off the page for me. One is sort of the ability to expose and deploy and enable customers to sort of manage their apps that are going to be engaging with their employees in a centralized way, right? You now can get the experience of the app on the left pane. You can sort of manage it in that way. Again, whether it's a Power App experience all the way to a deeply integrated, a large-scale SaaS app, the full range allows you to expose them and manage them accordingly. And then I think, gosh, the announcements this week have been awesome because I think this concept of sort of collaborative app has really fundamentally changed the way we all expect to work and expect our apps to work. Sort of the concept of going to a website to use my app and then copying and pasting things and sending them an email to someone. I mean, we all know this is the way we work in our line of business apps. This is the way we work with our own internal apps. And it's not really what people expect anymore. They want to be able to see the app. They want to be able to engage in their environment, and they want to be able to share and collaborate all in real time and all in the same experience. And this is the trend. This is really the way that apps are going to be built, both internally and externally. And I think it's, I mean, I'm really excited because I just love sort of the collaborative nature of what these apps will be able to do. And so some of these announcements that came out this week are just so exciting in sort of enabling that, things like sort of the shared stage integration that allow you to sort of build apps that actually can be shared across multiple users and edited across multiple users. It's just so powerful for enabling these types of solutions. So.
Yeah, definitely agree. Like Teams is really transforming the way the organizations do business and changing the workflows there. Totally agree, and super excited with what your team is doing and what has all been announced in the build. So one question to you, Aaron, that we got in is, what's the easiest way for people to get started with Teams as a platform?
Yeah, it's really easy to get started with Teams as a platform. The Teams team has published a lot of resources for developers to make it very easy to get started. So my first recommendation is to enroll in the M365 developer program. It's totally free, and you'll have access to a sandbox environment where you can do your development and do your testing completely outside of your corporate environment. So it's very helpful for doing testing without necessarily having to have all the security or compliance protocols or approvals of your corporate environment. Once you get enrolled in the M365 developer program, I recommend that you go check out the Getting Started section of the Microsoft Teams developer docs. We've got all kinds of resources there. My favorite two are sample code, so you can see some sample code on GitHub and fork it and use it yourself for basic Teams capabilities, as well as template apps. We've got almost 30 now. So these are apps that we have built and made open source so that you can use them and copy them yourself. And it gives you a great set of code that you can use to have basic app capabilities as you are trying to develop your own custom app. My other piece of advice is to start simple and go from there. Pick a workflow or pick a scenario, try to refine it end to end and make sure that the user is getting value at the end of that. So there's some kind of win at the end. Use all the resources to build that into Teams. And once you have that basic MVP scenario, you can start to embellish it from there and add additional capabilities in Teams.
Awesome, awesome. So we have another question, and I'll hand it over to Corey this time. So with platforms like Microsoft Mesh and Dynamics 365 available to developers to create immersive apps, how do you see Teams experience evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Mesh is it's sort of taking again this sort of collaborative experience and bringing it into a virtual world, but it's in some ways and even the Dynamics 365 side also sort of the expectation around running your business applications, doing your support processes, doing your remote assistance. They're all changing into the expectation that they're natively collaborative. Right. And so, the nice thing about all of these components is they're all very much coming together. Some of the most impactful D365 experiences, like Remote Assist, combines actually those services that you just mentioned, right? They bring together sort of Teams, they bring together HoloLens that allow you from a remote location to assist someone on, let's say, a factory floor or in any environment, to be able to understand how to work with the product, fix the product, just so many opportunities. And it's all this collaborative baseline. It's the expectation that you're not going to email off a manual with things highlighted. You're going to do it live. You're going to do it in the context of a voice, video, and deeply immersive application to allow you to go and give that support to the person who may be thousands of miles away, but will feel as if they're right next door. And so this really is how these things are coming together. And so Mesh and the platform that Mesh brings is another example of that collaborative opportunity to build experiences. And they all come together to basically change the way I think we think of remote as no longer different. And I'm so excited. You can see I just get so excited talking about it. So excited about the possibilities of these things coming together, and just how easy it is to get going, as sort of Aaron just walked through, to be able to start building and start thinking a little bit differently in the way that these apps need to be built.
Yep. And we are providing all of these tools for our developers to really get easily started and get going. Definitely. And so many apps. We also yesterday talked about Trello, and we talked about ServiceNow. So these are all exciting apps and scenarios and have been discussed during this week. How can people get hands on these apps? Like, where do they go to find these apps?
Yeah, so a lot of the apps that we chatted about in the session that you've heard about in Build are available in the App Store. So they are publicly available in Microsoft App Source and the Teams App Store. So my recommendation is go to the apps icon, which is in the lower left of your Teams window, select it, and see which apps are available to you. Now, if there's an app you're looking for and you don't see it, it might be because your administrator hasn't enabled it for you. So you can reach out to your IT team or whoever your team's administrator is and ask them about enabling that app. That said, some of the apps that we chatted about this past week are custom apps. For example, in Trent and I's section yesterday, we talked about an app called Bump, which is kind of bumping into someone in the hallway. It helps facilitate employee connection and employee collaboration. That was a custom app that was built for a specific customer. So if you're not an employee of that customer, unfortunately, you don't have access to that direct app, but it's very easy to go and build an app with the functionality that you want. So in my mind, see if it's available in the store. If not, go and build what it is that you want to see.
Definitely. And one question, as a developer that just comes to my mind is, so what are the best components for developers to use when building an app? Is it a bot? Is it a tab? What is the component that developers should use and focus on?
I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution, because the components you use should match the scenario that you want to build towards. So going back to what I was saying earlier, it's helpful to pick an MVP scenario. So MVP is minimum viable product, just a single scenario that leads to user value at the end, and then identify the team's components that make the most sense for that, for what your user is trying to accomplish. So if someone's trying to share an object from an external system, something like a message extension makes sense. But if you want people to be collaborating live in a meeting, similar to how we are collaborating right now, you should use a meetings extensibility, which is based off of Microsoft Teams tabs. So I think about the scenario and then find the component or the components that make the most sense. Another thing to think about is the context. So in Teams, there are personal context. So these are one-on-one chats or personal apps where no one else is involved. And then there's also collaborative context. So things like group chats or channels where there's a lot of people and that roster of attendees might be changing. And what you might put in a personal context might be more towards productivity. It might be more private discussions. What you might put in a public context are more collaborative and interactive with other colleagues kind of workflows. So there's no one-size-fits-all component within Teams. There's a lot of exciting things that have been happening in the platform. So I think pick the thing that helps the scenario you're trying to accomplish.
Definitely, totally makes sense. How about the Graph API? I've been hearing Graph API is a very powerful tool and how it really lights up a lot of these scenarios within apps. So how should I really think about using it within my app?
Graph API is really powerful and really cool. In essence, Graph API is a data layer which underlies every user within a Microsoft tenant, and it has access to where they sit in the org chart, the documents that they've been collaborating on, and the information that they access on a day-to-day basis. So tapping into Graph API allows you to manage or administer teams, channels, emails, calendar events, etc. on behalf of the user. So it's really powerful. That said, one caveat is that you really want to be careful of the graph permissions that your app is requesting and not be over requesting permissions. For example, if your app is requiring read, write, all permissions, some tenant admins might be less likely to allow the app or might request more security approvals and security information from your app before they allow it. So there's a balance between leveraging all the power that Graph has, but also not asking for more power than you need for the scenarios you're trying to build. Corey, I'm curious if you have anything to add about Microsoft Graph.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, like, I think you're exactly right. Like, you want to make sure you don't sort of overextend the types of things you're asking to use. But the way in which this can really become powerful is, again, bringing together a lot of the different components across M365 and even just the entire Microsoft Cloud. One of the examples, we even built internally sort of an app that will go into a calendar, right? So using sort of the Graph API, go into calendar and sort of come back and say, hey, when am I meeting with customers, and do sort of an integration with that and sort of a review of what is that customer using and sort of what's their feedback been, so that if I'm having a meeting with a customer, sort of I have everything ready for me, and then I can ask questions right in that experience. Again, the collaborative app, I can ask questions of my colleagues in that app with all of that information in front of me. And so it's kind of a good example of the opportunities to be able to take advantage and bring these things together, and still sort of, again, keeping in mind how to enable sort of that collaboration as part of it. But I do think that the Graph API will create a lot of really interesting opportunities for new apps to be built.
So we have some questions coming in around ACS as well. So I do want your guys' input on that particular topic. So how does ACS work with Teams to begin with?
Do you want to take that one, Erin, and then I can talk some of how customers are using it? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So ACS, which is Azure Communication Services, allows you to have communication interfaces outside of Teams, leveraging the Teams communications. So users of ACS can interact with Teams participants over voice or video, chat, screen sharing outside of a Teams interface. In fact, at Build, I learned about a customer who is using ACS to bring the Teams meeting video and Teams meeting app experience to a mobile app that they launched to their customers. And it allows patients at a hospital to have video consults with the doctor without having to download a Teams client and use a Teams client to access that Teams video. Users of your custom applications don't need to have a Teams identity or a Teams application in order to access those chat or calling interfaces, which is really powerful, and it expands your audience. When a communication services user joins their Teams meeting, their display name is provided through the calling so that you have transparency about who is in there as well. So ACS has a lot of really cool tools and can be great for scenarios where you want attendees outside of your Teams environment or your customer environment to be able to join and participate.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add just a little bit. I think when I work with customers, and sometimes it's this sort of question of, hey, do I use ACS or do I build in this new Teams platform? I actually think the answer is relatively clear. The building within Teams means you want it to be a part of the Teams experience and the Teams engagement across your employees. But using ACS, you can basically take the power of Teams into your existing app or into an app that you want to expose with maybe a different shell or a different sort of experience out to perhaps even end customers. And one of Erin gave a great example. Another example was that I've worked with is sort of a training company that basically has an app that connects their volunteers with their medical dispatchers, and this allows sort of video calls to stream during the CPR training, but they already had an app, right? They already had an app and experience that they had built that sort of enabled this full sort of training experience, and they wanted to add the video streaming capability to it, and so they used ACS to basically be able to do that and offer sort of that deep engagement as part of their app. So I think it's a great sort of two sides of the same coin type of capability, whether it's going to be in your native app or whether your app is going to be available in Teams. And by the way, both are possible, right? You can sort of have an app for each depending upon the type of scenario you're trying to enable.
Awesome, very interesting scenario, Corey, indeed. So when I think about authentication, right, like how should I think about authentication? Like, when I'm building an app for Teams. I don't know, Corey or Aaron, who wants to take this?
I can.
Aaron, you want to take it?
Yeah. So I think if nothing else, make authentication as simple as possible for the user. I'm sure we've all had an experience where we want to go use an app, whether it's on our phones or within Teams or perhaps in the web, and it requires us to create an account, validate that account, set up two-factor authentication, all of these steps just to be able to use the app and see what its value is. And if you're anything like me, half the time you go, this is not worth it, and you just close out or you move on to another workflow. So if you build an app that has a complicated registry or authentication set up right from the start, you're going to have a bad experience for users and you're going to have that same user outflow. So keep it simple. Make the authentication as lightweight or as silent as possible. And there's a lot of really great capabilities within the Microsoft ecosystem to have a no auth experience. For example, AAD SSO, so that's using the Azure Authentication Directory to have a single sign-on experience. It's so incredibly powerful. To the end user, it just automatically works, or automagic is what I like to call it, because they never have to think about account registration or sign in. They click the app and it immediately has value for them. And it also has a lot of benefits for administrators as well. They can provision accounts directly linked to Azure Authentication Directory, which means if they need to revoke access, they can do so very easily through Azure Authentication Directory. And it has a lot of benefits for users and administrators. So I recommend AAD SSO as the gold star for how to do authentication within Teams. It has the best experience for users and for administrators. Short of that, there's a lot of other options for doing authentication within Teams, and I recommend that you check our developer docs. We have a section on authentication, and we have some sample code and templates as well.
Awesome, sounds good. So we have been getting some questions around our roadmaps, around our upcoming features. So where can people actually go in and get all these forward-leaning announcements from Microsoft? Corey, Aaron, any of you guys want to take that one?
Yeah, so we have announced a lot of really exciting M365 features at Build. There's two places where you can go to learn more about those. First, on our Microsoft blog, we have a blog post about the Build announcements, which has more details about the availability. Some of the things we've announced are generally available, so you can go use those in your applications today. Some of them are in developer preview, such as the full stage meetings extensibility. So you can develop them in your M365 developer environment. And then once they are GA, you can launch them to your regular environments as well. The other resource that I recommend you check out is the M365 roadmap. So this is a public roadmap that we continually update that has a list of all of our features and when they will be available. So if there's something that you're curious to see in Teams or you heard us talk about today and you're wondering when it will be available, the M365 roadmap is where to do that. And we'll make sure that we post into the chat a link to that roadmap.
The other thing, Nitin, that I may add to that as well is, one of the things that, we make so many announcements and we make so many exciting changes. The one thing that wasn't actually a new announcement, but may have felt new, was some of the Power Apps and Dataverse integration. into Teams. And so this would be, you know, another place to go look would be sort of at some of the roadmap and progress around Power Apps and Power Virtual Agents and how they integrate into Teams, because the ability to actually go build a simple app with very little code and just get started with Power Apps and Dataverse right in the Teams experience and enable it in Teams. It wasn't new actually at Build, but there's many more samples that are now available that you can go check out. And it's just, I think it's just such a cool experience. And so I would recommend you continue to sort of keep eyes on those sample apps because they're exposing new capabilities as they come out as well, and allow you to sort of go build in a low code way. And then of course the Power Virtual Agents as part of that as well. Power Apps plus Power Virtual Agents come together in a really nice way to create a nice bot experience with an automation backend and allow you to sort of get things done in a really simple way as part of your organization.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on these blogs and resources online. So one question, so we announced the M365 ISV program. So what are some of these perks around that program for our ISV partners?
I'm so glad you asked. I am so excited for this program because it's really going to bring a lot of benefit to our ISVs who are developing apps for Teams. So the program is called the Modern Work ISV program, and you can find more information about it at aka.ms/modernworkisv. So it should be pretty easy to remember. There's a lot of perks within it to help you get started developing your app and bringing it to your customers. We start with a $3,000 Azure credit, and who can say no to Azure credits? These will help you host your app and get up and running with the development. We also provide vouchers for certification exams for M365 and Microsoft program certifications. You'll get access to one-on-one technical consultations to help you with some of the trickier technical things you're trying to implement or give you new ideas of how you could approach your app. And we'll have toolkits to help you drive adoption and go to market for your app as well. So from beginning of development all the way to launching to customers, the Modern Work ISV program is going to help you have financial success from your applications and teams. So I really encourage you to go check it out and register today.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys, for being here, for answering all these questions. We have last 2 minutes, so I'll just want to close it out by saying thank you to you guys. Any final comments before I close this off?
Maybe I'll just end with a big thank you for the questions and the discussion, and let's go try it out. I mean, that's you know, back to my years in development, just getting started is sometimes the best way. So go build something, have some fun.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. Just for our audience here, we have some other awesome Microsoft Teams sessions that you should take a look at and participate. And we love you to take a look at those. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your rest of the Microsoft Build.